My ex-husband left me after 7 years of marriage because I couldn't give him a child. He cut off all financial support, blocked my number, and told everyone in our circle that I was useless as a wife. What he didn't know was that just a few months later, I would be pregnant with twins. And the man he once called the lonely guy next door would turn out to be someone far more powerful than anyone in our town could have imagined. Is there anyone in your life that you wish you could get revenge on? Tell me in the comments who that person is and what they did. I'd really like to know your story. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so I can continue bringing you these stories. Your support helps me keep creating and sharing new content for you. My name is Amelia Hart, and this is the story of how my ex-husband abandoned me after 7 years without children, and how life gave me the most unexpected kind of revenge. I got married to Brandon when I was 25. He came from a decent family and had a stable job as a regional manager in a logistics company. In the beginning, our marriage felt normal. We went on dates, planned our future, and talked about having children someday. But as the years passed and I didn't get pregnant, things slowly started falling apart. Brandon's mother was the first one to openly show her disappointment. Every time we visited her, she would make subtle and sometimes not so subtle comments about how a woman's real purpose is to give her husband children. At family gatherings, she would compare me with other women who had children and say things like, "Some women are just not blessed with that ability." Brandon never once defended me. He would either stay silent or later tell me at home that I was overreacting. By the 5th year of our marriage, the pressure had become unbearable. Brandon started becoming distant. He began staying late at work and would get irritated whenever I suggested we see a fertility specialist together. I could feel him slipping away, but I kept trying to hold on. I went through multiple tests, took medications, and even changed my diet completely, all in the hope that things would get better. But nothing worked. In the 7th year, Brandon finally decided he had waited long enough. One evening, he came home and sat me down with a serious expression. He didn't even try to soften his words. "Amelia, I can't do this anymore. I want children. I want a family. You can't give me that, and I'm tired of waiting. I think we should get a divorce." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I begged him to at least try IVF together or explore other options. I told him we could adopt if he wanted, but he had already made up his mind. He said he didn't want to waste any more years on something that clearly wasn't working. 2 weeks later, he moved out. He blocked my number, stopped all financial support, and told his family and friends that I was infertile and useless. The most painful part was that he didn't even try to hide that he was already talking to other women. Within 4 months of our divorce, he got engaged to a 26-year-old girl. I was left completely alone. I had no job at the time because Brandon had asked me to quit working during our marriage so we could focus on having a baby. I had very little savings and almost no family support. For months, I stayed inside my small apartment, crying and feeling like my life was over. I felt like a failure, as a wife, as a woman, and as a person. That's when I met him. His name was Logan Reeves. He was 42 years old and lived in the house right next to mine. People in our neighborhood called him the lonely former sheriff because he rarely spoke to anyone. 5 years ago, he had resigned from his position as a sheriff after his wife passed away in a car accident. Since then, he kept to himself. He mostly stayed inside his house or worked on his old truck in the driveway. I met Logan on a rainy evening when my car broke down on the road near our houses. I was struggling to figure out what was wrong when he came out and offered to help. He didn't ask unnecessary questions or give me pitying looks. He simply fixed the issue quietly and efficiently. When I tried to pay him, he refused and said, "It's fine, you're my neighbor." After that day, we started talking occasionally. He was quiet, but respectful. He never judged me for being divorced or for not having children. Slowly, our conversations became longer. He told me about his late wife and how empty his life had felt since her death. I told him about my divorce and how broken I felt inside. For the first time in years, someone made me feel like I was still worth something. Not because of what I could give them, but simply because I existed. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally. There was no pressure, no expectations, and no judgment. Logan made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt in a very long time. 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant with twins. After finding out I was pregnant with twins, my life took a direction I never expected. At first, I was terrified. I had spent the last 7 years being told by my ex-husband and his family that I was incapable of having children. Now, suddenly, I was carrying 2. I didn't know how I was going to manage everything alone. But I wasn't alone. Logan Reeves, the man everyone in our neighborhood called the lonely former sheriff, became my biggest support. When I told him about the pregnancy, he didn't panic or pull away. Instead, he looked at me calmly and said, "I'm here, Amelia. Whatever you need, I'm here." From that day onward, Logan became a constant presence in my life. He helped me move out of my small, lonely apartment and into a proper house with enough space for the babies. He made sure I was eating properly, accompanied me to every doctor's appointment, and even researched about twin pregnancies so he could understand what I was going through. For the first time in many years, I felt genuinely cared for. Logan never made me feel like I was a burden. He never asked for anything in return. He simply showed up, consistently and quietly. As my pregnancy progressed, Logan started revealing small details about his past. One evening, while we were sitting on his porch, he told me something that completely changed how I saw him. "Amelia," he said, "I wasn't just a regular sheriff. Before I became the sheriff of this town, I worked as a private security consultant for some very high-profile people. I still have connections in different fields, including medicine." I looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "I mean that if you want the best possible care for you and the babies, I can arrange it. No compromises." At first, I didn't fully understand what he meant, but as the months passed, I started to see the reality of who Logan really was. When I was 7 months pregnant, Logan arranged for me to be treated by one of the top celebrity medical teams in the country. These were doctors who usually only handled high-profile cases, politicians, celebrities, and wealthy businessmen. They started visiting me at home regularly with advanced equipment and gave me round-the-clock monitoring. I was shocked by the level of care I was receiving. When I asked Logan how he managed to arrange everything, he simply said, "I still have some old contacts. Let me take care of you and the babies. That's all that matters right now." I didn't push him for more details at the time. I was too focused on having a safe pregnancy. But I could sense that Logan was not just an ordinary former sheriff. There was something much bigger about his past that he wasn't fully revealing yet. Meanwhile, my ex-husband, Brandon, eventually found out about my pregnancy through mutual friends. At first, he didn't believe it, But when he saw me one day at a grocery store with my clearly visible pregnant belly, his face completely changed. A few weeks before I was due, Brandon showed up at my house unannounced. He looked shocked when he saw how far along I was. "Amelia, is it true?" he asked. "You're really pregnant?" I stood at the door and replied coldly, "Yes, with twins." He looked confused and almost angry. "But how? The doctor said you couldn't have children." I looked at him and said, "Maybe the problem wasn't with me, Brandon. Maybe it was with you." His face turned pale. He stood there for a few seconds trying to process what I had just said. Before he could respond, Logan's car pulled into the driveway. When Brandon saw Logan getting out of the car and walking toward the house like he belonged there, his expression shifted from shock to something closer to fear. Logan walked up to me, placed a protective hand on my back, and looked at Brandon. "Can I help you with something?" he asked in a calm but firm voice. Brandon looked between Logan and me, his face turning even paler. You're with him?" he asked in disbelief. I didn't answer. I simply looked at Brandon and said, "You made your choice when you left me. Now I've made mine." Brandon stood there for a few more seconds, looking completely defeated. Then, without saying another word, he turned around and walked away. That was the last time I saw him before the delivery. A few weeks later, I gave birth to 2 healthy boys. The delivery was handled by the top medical team that Logan had arranged. Everything went smoothly and both babies were perfectly healthy. As I held my sons for the first time, I realized how much my life had changed in such a short period. The man everyone in town had dismissed as the lonely guy had turned out to be the one who gave me the family I always wanted, while the man who once called me useless was left watching from a distance.